Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here to talk about this incredibly important issue that is going to impact Americans all across this country. And it has to do with the Biden administration's new tailpipe emission regulations that will essentially require that 2/3 of all cars and light trucks being sold in 2032 to be electric vehicles. Now, electric vehicles are fun to drive if you've ever had an opportunity to drive them. But this is a top-down, government-mandated solution to how we reduce our impact on the environment. And it's going to have unintended consequences that are going to hurt American families. For example, there's really four key takeaways I want you to take away from this. One is that EVs cost on average last year $53,000. The average low-income family spends $12,000 on a car. And owning a car, especially in states like mine in Nebraska, that's a pathway to poverty. That's how you get to your job. And so it is going to harm our families from being able to pursue the American dream. Also in states like Nebraska, we're rural. And we have a lot of cities that don't have chargers. And so it's going to make it difficult for those families to be able to get to their jobs. We have some cities that are 45 minutes away from the nearest charger. Also, when you hit cold weather, EV batteries lose their charge, which means that you're not going to be able to get to your job very easily. And certainly when you're talking about agriculture, on a 95-degree day, you just can't pull over for 3 hours and charge your truck when you're hauling cattle. So it's a big deal there. Also, this is something that there is no plan for. The Biden administration has no idea where they're going to generate the power or how they're going to do the transmission lines. So they don't actually know how this would actually happen. And think about this, right? At the same time they want us to buy more electric vehicles, they just issued those rules in the Clean Power Plan that will actually attack our power generation. So they want us to use more electricity on one hand and stop us from generating electricity on the other hand. And finally, EV batteries take critical minerals, rare earth elements. And China produces anywhere between, or processes 60 to 80% of these. And so I'm looking around, I'm seeing a lot of young faces. For those of us old enough to remember the Arab oil embargo, we remember what it was like to be energy dependent on a different area of the world that wasn't too friendly to us. Why on earth would we make ourselves dependent on our chief adversary in the world, the People's Republic of China? So, as Pete Ricketts, Senator of Nebraska, I'm joined by my colleagues, Dan Sullivan from Alaska, John James, and also Russ Fulcher, unfortunately, Russ got caught into a committee. He can't be here. But we are introducing this Bipartisan Congressional Review Act to block the implementation of this delusional rule. I promised Nebraskans that I would use every tool in my toolbox to fight against this delusional rule to be able to protect their jobs, their quality of life, and that's what we're doing with this Congressional Review Act. And with that, I'd like to turn over to my colleague, Dan Sullivan.
Well, thank you, Senator Ricketts and Congressman James. Good to see you, sir. So I think what Pete Ricketts just said is really important. It's a delusional rule. It's not just light trucks, it's heavy trucks. And it's all trucks, essentially, to be EVs within the next, by early 2030s. Think about that. All trucks to be EVs, okay? I was just with a bunch of really smart young Alaskans on the steps there, part of the close-up program. A lot of them are here right now watching this. I asked them, I said, in Alaska, do you think a rule that would mandate EVs for the whole country, particularly on trucks, light and big trucks, would that work? Okay, my smart young Alaskans who are here watching this press conference just kind of all together just looked at me and said, no, common sense. The young students from Alaska know this won't work. We had Secretary Buttigieg up in our state last summer, okay, meeting with trucking companies, aviation companies, and in a roundtable, one of the leaders of our trucking businesses, transportation businesses, a great Alaskan named Jim Jansen, looked at the secretary and said, Mr. Secretary, think about this, okay? We drive these big trucks up to Prudhoe Bay, one of the biggest oil and gas fields in North America, to produce energy for America. Okay, you ever seen the show Ice Road Truckers? Okay, that's what you're doing. 40, 50 below zero. Jim Jansen looked at the Secretary of Transportation and said, the EV mandates for trucks will never work in this state. Never. Everybody from Jim Jansen to our great young Alaskans knows this. The people in this city don't know it. So they're going to try and force on Americans an EV mandate for trucks that has no potential to actually work. And it's going to drive up the costs of buying trucks. It's going to drive up our reliance on China, as Senator Ricketts just said, for critical minerals. Some of you may have seen, we held a press conference 2 weeks ago. The Biden administration said the biggest deposit of critical minerals, probably in America, called the Ambler Mining District in Alaska, we're going to shut down. So nobody can actually produce critical minerals in the great state of Alaska. What? And now you're going to mandate EVs, trucks for Americans? Where are we going to get those critical minerals? Senator Ricketts said it. Our biggest adversary, the People's Republic of China. We won't get it in America. Biden shut down Alaska 2 weeks ago, but we'll get it from China on a mandate that won't work, that'll drive up costs. I just want to finish my remarks with a statement from the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association President Todd Spencer about this. Here's what he says. Small business truckers, he's in charge of this association, make up 96% of trucking and could be regulated out of existence if the EPA's misguided mandates come into effect. This could have devastating effects on the reliability of America's supply chain and ultimately on the cost and availability of consumer goods. So this is a mandate that's not only not going to work, it's not only going to have an impact on the production of vehicles, this is going to have costs to Americans through supply chains that are going to raise prices even more. And in the era of Biden inflation, we don't need higher prices. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators, for your leadership, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here on behalf of my constituents and where most Americans are. Let's just put this plainly. Republicans and Americans are about choice. We believe very strongly in energy choice, and all of the above approach. If wind works, if solar works, if hydrogen works, if nuclear works, we should be deploying the full resources of the American economic and energy might to keep prices low and to keep our adversaries at bay. Republicans believe in school choice because we believe that when you give parents a choice, you give children a chance. And we also believe in vehicle choice. We believe if you want a hybrid, get a hybrid. If you want an EV, get an EV. But most people don't have those choices. Most people don't get to pick and choose that they get to spend $53,000 on a new EV. Last year, as Senator Ricketts mentioned, the average price of a new car, $12,000. Well, since Bidenflation over the past 3.5 years, American consumers are spending nearly $1,000 per month for basic essentials. You do the math there, you've priced out the lowest income people, not just from physical mobility, but socioeconomic mobility. The very same people that this administration is lying through their teeth saying that they protect. They are literally putting in policies and procedures that crater the lower and middle class. They're asset-limited, income-constrained employees, working poor people in my district who need a method of conveyance to take their children to school to get to their second shift of work. And Joe Biden is pricing them out of their livelihoods. There's not one single district that does not rely on internal combustion engine vehicles. And this is not an either or, this is an and both. We must protect our environment. We must make sure we have clean air and, being from a Great Lakes state, clean water. But we have to do so in a manner that doesn't send our people into poverty. We must do so in a manner that is responsible. And this administration has shown that the only consequences they care about are elections in November. That's what this is about. Joe Biden and his administration are outsourcing and our future. our children's futures to Beijing and to activists. That's the only way this makes sense. When you look at China, where we get our critical minerals, when you look at where they're mined and refined, you look they're mined in the worst human rights environments, in the dirtiest methods possible, in the Congo region, and they say Black Lives Matter. Well, prove it. Let's clean up these supply chains. You see what those mines look like? You've seen the videos of children using their hands in these artisanal mines. This is what we're talking about. There's no oversight here. This is why I put my Bridge to DRC Act to make sure that in addition to reshoring our critical mineral supply chain, we're also addressing the human rights issues with our battery supply chains as well. We have to make sure we're doing both. And we have to make sure that these policies make sense. All over the country, we have grid issues. We have brownouts during the summer and blackouts during the winter. We have an aging grid, and you say we're going to be plugging these things in? While your regulations are inhibiting new natural gas facilities, their power generation that could bring 1,200 megawatts online in the state of Michigan in the span of a couple of years, and you're saying no to that because you think we're going to plug our EV into a tree. We're not stupid. The American people know better. We can't afford these policies, and it's going to be more impactful than just your election. And so we got sent here to fight for people who can't fight for themselves, to speak for people who can't speak for themselves, and to stand for people who can't stand for themselves and surely cannot stand this administration's policies. We're here to protect American jobs. We're here to build bridges with people who are willing to build bridges with us. We're here not just to make sure that we're not outsourcing our futures to Mexico and China, but to make sure that jobs can stay in the Michigan's 10th Congressional District, the #1 manufacturing district in the entire nation, where there are layoffs happening with American auto workers because this administration is sending their wages and sending their pensions and sending their bonuses to other countries. I had the opportunity to question Secretary Buttigieg. I asked him directly. I asked him, what's going to happen when the penalties that you levy on American businesses, General Motors, Stellantis, Ford, that constitute 50% of Michigan's GDP? What's going to happen when your penalties for standards you know we can't hit, when that happens? What's going to happen to UAW's benefits? He didn't have an answer, but he had his talking points. Well, talking points from Washington, D.C. aren't good enough anymore. We are standing up to this administration that is so divorced from the reality of the American people that it requires the legislators who you sent here to stand up and fight for your behalf. So it is my honor to stand next to these true blue Americans to stand up for your rights and for your vehicle choice. Thank you so much.
Dang, Congressman James, we're going to have you back more often. You're really good. You had notes?
Hey, I tried.
Well, again, you can see the problems that this EV mandate has. I was talking to one person who said the Biden administration is going to run into two big problems with this EV mandate: math and physics. As we have described, this is just not workable. It's not going to be good for our American families, and it's especially going to harm our low-income families in this country as it drive up the cost of used cars, which is how folks get to work. It's how they take care of their families. And you heard all the other issues. And here's the kicker, folks. In this country, we solve our problems with innovation. We have companies that can figure out how to do this without a one-size-fit-all answer from this administration. So that's why we're here, and I appreciate Congressman James. I had to go to his next thing. Appreciate Senator Sullivan, appreciate Congressman Fulcher for helping with this Congressional Review Act. And at this point, we'd go ahead and like to take questions from the press.
We have time for like one or two before they've got to go. Any questions?
Yeah. So we're going to be introducing this Congressional Review Act. Leader Schumer will ultimately decide when it comes to the floor, but he is going to have to bring it to the floor, and it has to be within how many? 60 session days.
And by the way, already we know it has bipartisan support. I did a press conference with Senator Manchin in Houston a couple weeks ago. He is fully supportive. I think it's likely we'll get other Democrats to support this because they're hearing from their constituents. And as you heard today, this is a rule that doesn't make sense, so it's very likely it'll pass, almost certainly in the House. Very likely it'll pass in the Senate, and then we'll see if Joe Biden vetoes what the vast majority of the members of the House and Senate want, which is they don't want his rule, so it'll be on his desk, and we'll see if he vetoes it.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Okay,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much, everybody.